So you met so many interesting characters along the way in the feds and everything. One guy that I've always heard good stuff that you talked about was Michael Roccaforte, and there's a guy that you guys had like a mutual, and even New Carmine.
A New Yorker named Christian Tarantino was building a near-perfect life for himself. Tarantino was a Long Island native who turned a childhood interest in wrestling and exercise into a gym ownership business, earning himself a small fortune. Tarantino lived in a $1.3 million house in the suburb of Dix Hills.
Carmine, tell me about that guy.
Chris Tarantino, he owned a gym, and supposedly he killed his partner. But what I understood, he was in for a armored car robbery where they killed the armored car driver. And I think Chris told me he was getting triple life.
Tarantino's sentencing came in 2013. It was a rowdy, contentious hearing, with the prosecution calling the defendant's supporters full of, quote, garbage, and Vinnie Gargiulo and Julius Baumgart's family members telling Tarantino he deserved to suffer for what he did. Dee Snider showed up with family members to support them, telling reporters outside he was still deeply affected by his brother-in-law's death. At the end of it all, it was Tarantino's turn to speak. By this point in his life, he was suffering from Parkinson's disease, slowly becoming a prisoner in his own body.
We met in Oklahoma City at the transfer center. He was going to Terre Haute, I believe. And I was on my way to Beaumont. So we're out there. I'm out there in the TV room, and Chris at the time, I don't know if he had MS or something, but he kind of walked with like a limp. He had like a sickness. And he came out to the TV room with his little plastic chair, and he sees me. And of course, I see him come in the door, and, Chris just looks Italian. You can see it. And I guess I do too. So he comes up to me and asks if anybody's sitting there. And I said, no. I said, sit on down. So we sit down, introduce ourselves, and we start to talking. And he starts talking about, the armored car and stuff like that. So I start telling him about the bank robbery story. He stops me halfway through and finishes my story. And I said, how the hell do you know this? He goes, ain't you Jimmy the Crease? I said, yeah. He goes, Carmine told me all about you. And I said, you're little Chris, who Carmine used to talk about. He goes, yeah. So then when I got to Beaumont with Rock, I mentioned Chris. And he goes, you knew Chris? I said, yeah, I met him in Oklahoma City. He goes, Chris was a crazy dude, man. He used to come to the poker games and everything. But it just shows you the small world. And it's like with Joey Testa. Rock was playing, they'd have these great big handball matches. They would call them pit matches, where they'd have 2-on-2, and then all the guys would line up all around the handball court, kind of like a pit, and there'd be gambling going on. And Rock was playing in the pit match with my pal Johnny, and Rock had a big old blister on his hand, and he was trying to find some gloves. I said, Joe gave me an old pair of weightlifting gloves back in Butner, way back in the day. I said, I still got those if you want them. So he put them on. He goes, yeah, these will work. So he had them. And I said, go ahead and keep them. And I guess a week later, he was talking to somebody who was talking to Joey. He said, hey, tell Joey I got his weightlifted gloves from Crease. So it's like it all comes full circle back.
Dude, that's nuts, man.
So crazy how small that world is.
Man, that really is, man. But listen, I'm tripping out on the Testa gloves, man. That might have been some murderabilia. I may have had to hold on to.
You know what? No, now that I think about it, I could have said he wore these in the Gemini Lounge.
These were Gemini gloves, buddy.
You saw the Hannibal Lecter movie where they sold his mat. That could have, Jesus.
Man. Hey,
I could have put some ketchup on those. And what was I thinking?
Joey Testa's gloves. Sell them with a copy of Murder Machine.
What could I got on eBay for that shit?
That's what I'm saying. On. Joey Testa's gloves. Get out of here. No, see, man, that's funny.
I told you, I'm not very bright.
Hey, well, no, man. You know what it is? You're a loyal friend, And that you thought about that over, I can make a buck from Joey Testa's gloves, So that's
Didn't
a good
even
thing.
think about it.
And the guy, your buddy's got a blister, and you're like, hey, here. You know what I'm saying?
Here,
You're not thinking.
absolutely. Well, I was betting on.
See, so you weren't greedy enough.
Shoot, I'm betting on Rock, yeah.
Damn
and it was
right.
the time when Rock was going through this fasting diet, he needed the diet anyway,
right.
And he had no energy. He's just walking around, and I'm like, why don't you fucking eat something?
Eat some carbs, man.
Jesus, eat a bowl of pasta or something before the game.
So what kind of crazy fast was he on, man? Was he really not eating much?
He wasn't eating. He was starving himself, and I'm like, dude, and the guy was
he's already
up.
Shredded. Yeah, I mean,
they had no weights there, and Rock was a big dude.
Yeah,
and I told you he had a cannon. On the softball team, he was like a shortstop, and that he had a rocket, boy.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, he looks like an athlete. That's what everybody says, man. Yeah.
Just like I always say, probably one of the best dudes I ever met in prison. I mean, he was just a really, really good guy. I hadn't heard anybody say anything bad about him.
Me either, man. Because you'll always hear, even the scumbags, that go online and talk crap about everybody. Yeah. I've seen those guys. When it gets to The Rock, they're like, yeah, The Rock was a great guy. And then boom, they'll go into the next thing.
See, I wish I could find him because when I was leaving, he still had 4 or 5 years ago.
Gotcha.
And he said, Crease, when I get out, I'm going to find you, and I'm going to have you come up and drive me around to the bars. I said, why? He said, because you make me laugh. He goes, I'll pay you just to drive me around.
We're going to get, man, we're making this connection happen, man. Rock.
Exactly. Right?
Email us, man. Email us, man. I got your drivers ready to roll.
Yeah.
Man. He's ready to roll. Solid guy, the Crease.
Yes.
Oh, man, that's great, man. Thanks for blessing us with that story.
Absolutely.
Jimmy, that's awesome, man.